Welcome to episode 11 of the Culture and Arts Podcast. Oh my goodness, it has been such a long time since we've had a new episode.
It has been too long. Too long.
It's been what, 3 weeks? 4 weeks?
I think it's been about, I don't think it's been 4 weeks, but it could, but it's at least been 3. So.
For those of you who have forgotten who we are, in case that were possible, because I'm sure you've been sitting at home going, man, I wish there was an episode of the Culture and Arts Podcast for me to listen to this week. My name is Joe Ruiz, and with me, as always, is David Merle.
David Merle, back. I feel like I'm back.
I'm bringing sexy back. Yeah.
You feel like you're back?
Yeah.
It's like the triumphant return.
But I guess we've all been gone. There's no shows without me. So
this this is very true. But we are without Jason Merle tonight.
We are. He's down in Indianapolis taking care of my mom. So we have some of those. We're still working out those situations, which is why we've been gone for a little bit.
No, I don't think we've been able to tell the audience, everything that was going on. Is there anything you feel cool sharing?
Oh yeah, my mom was on the double lung transplant list, and so we got that call in the middle of the night on, I believe, a Thursday night or Friday morning, and had to go down to Indianapolis, and she got the surgery was successful, and so, but she has to stay down there for a little while. She'll probably be down there for another 3 weeks to a month. She's not actually in the hospital. She's staying kind of in a dorm room now, but she still has to have care. So she has a niece down there taking care of her, and me and Jason will have to go back and forth here and there. So that's kind of the focus. So that's, unfortunately, the Caps had to be on the back burner a little bit as we've, tried to take care of Mom.
Well, I'm sure that all of our listeners would understand that family's got to come first, that there is a priority,
right?
The way that you have to set your priorities, and that podcasting, unfortunately, is going to take a backseat to family.
Right, but they can always go to the best of list and play some of their favorites.
It's true. They can listen to Hulkamania, the post-Valentine's Day episode,
and
Todd Fox.
That's it. Todd Fox, Stinky Man, all legends in the Cap
Go through
universe.
The archives.
That's it. Work through them a couple times, so we can make this happen.
Well, since we've been gone, there has been just a ton of stuff that's happened.
Man, and you're not only talking about how I've moved up to level 102 on Candy Crush.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
No, I mean, like the news cycle, it's almost as though the news, or the media or the universe or something greater, there was some grand scheme, and it knew that the Cap was not airing, and so it just made all these things happen.
It did, and not only that, and I think we're going to talk about a few of these things today. Subjects that you and I care a lot about.
Right.
I mean, because I've been, and I've made mention on the show numerous times, I'm a huge David Letterman fan, and he retired when I was, the past couple weeks.
Put retired in air quotes.
Okay.
I have suspicions.
Okay, we'll talk about that. We'll have to get on that. And then the Ultimate Warrior's death.
And that's the saddest news that I've had probably in 2014.
Oh,
here.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It pretty sad. That was pretty sad news. Are we just going to get into that now, or where are we going? Where are we heading?
Let's start with Letterman. Let's start with Letterman, Colbert, and then we'll go ahead and get into the Ultimate Warrior. For those wrestling fans that want to listen, they can stick at the end.
So, all right. Then we'll start with Letterman. Been a huge fan of Letterman for a long time, and there's many ways we could have discussed this had we've been into the cycle at the right time. We could have talked about potential candidates and that kind of thing.
Right.
But we've announced that it's Stephen Colbert. And I'll start with, I actually think that is a really good choice. Now,
Tell me why.
Well, because I think when it comes to hosting at the 11:30 slot, I do think that it helps if you've been successful at the 12:30 slot for a while. And so I think you have to have some skill to be able to interview people, prove that you can manage a fan base and do all that. And I think Stephen Colbert's done that at the 12:30 slot.
Sure.
Pretty well. Huge following. And so I think he has a bigger so if you look at the guys that as contenders that would put on the list, Stephen Colbert, Craig Ferguson.
They talked about Chelsea Handler.
Yeah, Chelsea Handler. So those people kind of emerge on the top of the list there, and I think Colbert's the cream of the crop out of that list.
He's probably the biggest all-star.
Yeah, I think he's the cream of the crop. I think he can slide down. I mean, because Jimmy Fallon on the Tonight Show,
Right.
He is, he's an incredible talent.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's going to be tough to beat.
Yes.
He is the guy of this generation that needs to be hosting the Tonight Show.
Absolutely.
There is nobody else on that list. So now, when you're talking about the Late Show, what I'm glad they didn't do is go out and try to pick someone that they think, oh, we need Jimmy Fallon Jr. or we need someone that's good. They went and they said, who's just going to be the best host of this show? And I think that in and of itself is going to produce, the right ratings and the right competition versus just trying to pick someone. I think that the Jimmy Fallon thing did emerge at okay, it's time. We gotta race to the finish line here and get Letterman behind because
it's kind of polarizing a little bit. I think where with Jay Leno and David Letterman, you were either a Leno person
That's
or
true.
you were a Letterman person.
That's true.
And I think they're going to continue that trend now. You're either going to be a Colbert person or you're going to be a Fallon person with those two picks. They didn't pick somebody that would, make you sad that you couldn't watch both shows.
Okay, now that's a good point. And that may have been their strategy because they probably want a large enough fan base that people are tuning in every night, and they probably don't want you flipping the channels back and forth based on, who's the guest tonight and that kind of thing.
And that's often what I've done with Leno and Letterman. I've only watched it if I knew someone I really liked was going to be on the show.
So were you not a fan of Letterman or Leno?
When I was younger, I really liked Leno. But, as he got older, as I got older, I kind of just stopped watching.
All right. I'm still very much a Letterman fan. I will finish out watching Letterman. I've watched Fallon a couple times when Letterman's been reruns. I've liked Fallon for a while.
And you know what's great about Fallon?
Yeah.
Even if you don't watch his show, you're going to watch it the next day because 3 of the segments from whatever he did that night are going to be viral.
Right. Everybody will be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's really the guy for the Tonight Show for this generation. And I think Colbert will do well. Well, I'll be disappointed if he doesn't because I want the Late Show brand to continue. I kind of feel the same way about Late Night, but I actually think Seth Meyers, I know he's head writer on SNL and he was, shows some gravitas there, but I'm not a Seth Meyers fan. I'm not crazy about him, so I doubt I'll be turning into.
Well, how much do you know about him?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not the guy. You think I need to revisit that theory? You a big Seth Meyers fan?
No, I mean, Jimmy Fallon, when he started, he did the SNL thing. He had a few movies that were, less than successful, I would say. He did Fever Pitch with Drew Barrymore about the crazy Boston Red Sox fan.
Though.
I love it too. No. I thought it was great. I watch it. If it's on TV or whatever, I'll usually turn it to that. But I'm saying, in terms of iconic movies that everyone's always going to remember or something that's going to win an Academy Award, that's just not there. Along with Taxi with Queen Latifah.
Right.
And, he had just kind of these mediocre, probably, films in terms of, what Hollywood sees as successful. And that's all I knew about him. He did Saturday Night Live. Granted, he was part of the Cowbell skit, which is
the greatest skit ever, by the way.
Best skit ever. And then he did these movies. And so when he took over doing that show, all I knew was, okay, Saturday Night Live guy, he got a gig doing this show, really didn't know much about him, really don't care much about him.
Okay.
But he did a few things, made some executive decisions. One, he brought on The Roots as his late night band.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of The Roots because I like what I call real hip-hop music.
Right.
And then on top of that, he did things like he attempted a Saved by the Bell reunion, which he couldn't necessarily get off the ground right away, but he did a California Dreams reunion, which was a Saved by the Bell-ish show in the 90s. And so he went after my generation. He went after my childhood.
Right.
And he pulled some of those things that I used to do or watch as a teenager, and he made them prevalent again. And so that was oh, man, all of a sudden Jimmy Fallon, in my eyes, is the funniest guy they could have possibly picked.
Right.
Because he's making these decisions
that
mean something to me.
No, he's slick. And I could go on as to why he'll be successful. He was never the Saturday Night Live character that you tended to repeat the next day. Like, he never had
Right.
some of those classic lines,
Yeah.
which is why I don't think he did well in the movies like some of the other SNL people do. But the thing about Fallon is he has a lot more talent. I think that's fair to say. I mean, he can imitate anyone.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a musical ear, and he can sing. He can even imitate people singing.
Yeah.
And so he has all that ability, and that's more geared for a talk show host. And so I think the Tonight Show is going to be a format he succeeds in. I think the other
Me
thing,
too.
the other thing that I would say that Fallon, a little bit speculation, but I think this is true. He's not afraid to let someone else come in and shine. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? If someone's turning in because of the Roots or Full House or some of these other things,
Mm-hmm.
he views that as a success. Hey, just come to the Tonight Show.
Right.
Be watching what we're doing here. And he does some stuff like they play charades and stuff.
Yeah,
and
he's got this like staple of games.
Yeah, and that is just there is a brilliance to that, because it's like he's wanting some accidents to happen. He's wanting some crazy to happen.
Yeah.
It's kind of a unique strategy, but I think it's going to be effective for him.
And people think that it's fun too to see celebrities come out of their comfort zone.
Right.
You know, not take themselves too seriously. It makes them a lot more likable.
Right.
And he brings that out of people.
Right. And he's recognized that there's something about competition, I think, in particular, and then putting celebrities in these potentially embarrassing
Right.
situations where it's going to be funny.
Yeah.
You know? And so
And the people that he's picked, at least so far, they seem to just embrace it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just run with it.
Yeah, and I think his personality helps it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, he gets out there and he stirs the competition, and he's saying crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's doing a good job. I thought we were talking about Letterman, but we get on Fallon.
Well,
but
that's the thing is, I don't know how Colbert is going to beat him in the ratings. I mean, that's why you're either going to have to be like, you're going to have to be the kind of guy that's like, I can't stand Fallon.
Right.
In order to want Colbert, I think.
Right. Yeah. Now, interesting. That's a good point. Now that actually scares me a little bit, because who's not going? Fallon does annoy me a little bit when he gets laughing. I think he's too big when he laughs. But they're not asking me to host the Tonight Show or the Late Show, for that matter.
Although some were petitioning for for you to take Letterman's spot.
That's it. And I was going to try to use my cap format to make to expand that audience a little bit, but I lost, I guess, to Colbert there. So that'll be it. I do think that Colbert's crowd will follow him, but it won't be. It'll be different, because they won't be because they hate Fallon.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be like, I like Colbert, but
Are you a Colbert fan? Have you watched his show on
okay.
Comedy Central?
I've watched Colbert and Stewart via viral. You know what I'm saying? So I've not watched. And I've watched a considerable amount that way, because they're on fire. So, and if you watch some of their stuff that's gone viral, it's the cream of the crop. It's just some amazing, funny stuff. So, and I've even watched him in interviews on other shows and that kind of thing.
Right.
Why do you ask?
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to gauge where the success is going to be. When Fallon did his first night on the Tonight Show, Colbert was one of many celebrities that came out onto the stage to congratulate him on the Tonight Show.
All right.
And then all of a sudden he's taking over Letterman's show. But my thing is, you have to be a Colbert fan to really be excited about this. Like, I've watched Colbert's show on Comedy Central, and I'm really not, it's just not something that I choose to tune into all the time. It's not my cup of tea, per se.
Right.
So when he took over, or when they announced that he was going to take over for David Letterman, I was just kind of like, okay. I mean, like, I get it. He's got a fan base, but this is not someone that's going to make me want to tune into Letterman.
I guess I was just stoked because I didn't think they dropped the ball. I was worried that they were going to try to do something novel, or do something where someone, like, it really would be a tough celebrity that could make it work, having not hosted a show before. Mm-hmm. And I was concerned they were going to go that route. I think there's guys out there that could. I'm sure, like Jamie Foxx or somebody.
Oh yeah, Jamie Foxx. Yeah, that's actually a good suggestion. He could have done
but the
it.
problem is Jamie Foxx has enough going on that
he's still doing movies.
That he'd host it for 2 years and then leave. And they want the 30-year commitment. And unfortunately, you want someone that's not so talented that that they can then break away. You want them to lock in for a while,
right?
And so it'll be interesting. I mean, because when they think about the Tonight Show, even though they probably signed shorter contracts, I mean, Carson was around 29 years, Jay Leno was around for a couple decades,
sure,
and way too long in my mind. And So that, I mean, Letterman's been around. He's been doing one show or another for close to 30 years. So, I don't know if I would assume that they're wanting that kind of longevity.
Now, here's my conspiracy theory.
All right, yeah, let me hear that
Because
out.
I know that, and I wish Jason was here because I bet he would have read up a lot about this and he would probably know exactly the ins and outs of their decision-making process.
Right.
But I have to think that when Fallon took over for Leno, it was like, here's this young kid who everybody seems to love and all of his videos are going viral.
Right.
And he's got this huge buzz surrounding him and his show.
Right.
And then we have Letterman, who's been on for a long time, and there's nothing going viral about Letterman. There's nothing, you know what I mean? There's really not anything moving and shaking. It's just his show as it's always been. The guy's getting a little bit older.
Solid point. That is a real good point.
I could see a situation where he didn't choose to retire at all, but the network said, let's push him out because we want to give it to someone younger who's going to compete.
I don't know if they pushed him out, but I could see some conversations being had where they're like, Letterman.
Yeah, not a you're fired, but we'll give you some money.
Can we accelerate this thing a little bit?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that he doesn't know when that it'll be probably is further proof of that because he probably has a contract end date. Mm-hmm. So I would think that he could say, oh, yeah, on the last day of my contract. But I bet it's amongst many of the other things that aren't, that just haven't been worked out. And I bet it'll be sooner than later than 2015. Because you're right. Because I follow Letterman's feed, and that's really the only time I ever get anything about Letterman. Mm-hmm. Fallon, on the other hand, all my friends are sharing
posting
stuff.
Things.
They're sharing what's it called, the history of rap, and that they do that, which is incredible.
Hip hop dance,
right.
Lip syncing competitions,
and then he'll sing songs with the Roots using classroom, things like blurred lines or
slow jamming the news with the president. And there's so much.
Yeah, there's so much, and people aren't quoting Letterman that way.
They're not.
You know what I'm saying? He probably has a faithful fan base like myself, but it's not catching on fire. Mm-hmm. And Fallon, even Conan, when he took over for a little bit, and I think he was probably the rightful heir during that season, but I think Fallon's going to – I think he'll be able to make it work, tap into this generation more so than the other guys.
Oh, yeah, he's going to do – I mean, he's just doing so much more than I think anyone could have anticipated because he is in tune with the modern day.
Right. Now, from about – let me say this, though, and see if you agree with me. From about 1981 or 2 to, I think, 1982 to about 1993, Johnny Carson was on the first hour. David Letterman was on the second hour. I think it'll be a long time before the late night 2 hours there will have talent at that level back to back. And
sure.
I don't think we have it now. Even though as much as we're, I'm going to give Johnny Carson a little love. As much as I love Fallon, I don't think he's a Johnny Carson.
Well, I would have a hard time arguing with that on the basis that I was born in 1985.
Right. Right.
I didn't get to see a lot of Carson.
Okay.
When did he stop?
He stopped, I believe, around 92, 93.
Okay, so I was still young enough where I wasn't staying up that late.
Are you trying to make me feel old here or something like that? Like, I remember,
I said, I can't really argue against it. I can't be like, oh, no, you're absolutely wrong.
Yeah, you've never seen an old episode or something?
I've seen some small clips, but not enough to really get a feel for who he was or why he was as popular as he was.
When you watch him, do you like him?
I don't know. I mean,
okay, so
he's a talk show host.
So Carson just not on your radar.
I don't know anything about
My
him.
heart breaks for you. That is sad. So fair enough.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about David Letterman and that whole situation. They have to do something to compete.
They have to do something to compete.
That's the moral of the story.
I'm excited to see, I guess, one more thing. Since I'm not the Colbert fan that I was Letterman fan, I'm excited to see who my loyalties will emerge to, because the Tonight Show and the Late Show are both brands that I care about.
Sure.
Largely one because of Carson, another one because of Letterman. So I want them both to succeed, but it'll be interesting to see if I develop a loyalty, because I've had Letterman loyalty for a long time.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So
the political change. There's some political changes there too, which I always heard that Leno was a Republican and he kind of favored bringing on some more Republican leaning people, like when Ron Paul ran.
Okay,
he brought him on, and I don't want to get too much into politics on the Culture and Arts podcast, but he's out of the picture now, and you have Fallon and Colbert, who are politically they're very left leaning guys, and they're more likely to support Democratic candidates and this and that and the other. So it's interesting the way that that's kind of gone too, because they don't bring those people on every day on a nightly basis. They don't talk politics on a nightly basis. But on occasion, they do create a platform for them.
Oh, sure. Letterman over the last few years allowed that left-leaning side of him to show. And that was a little frustrating to me at times, because I just think he was, I wanted him to be the guy he always was, where, he had a Velcro suit on, jumping on the wall and doing all those crazy things that I remember as a kid. I really didn't, wasn't worried about his thoughts on global warming or
right.
I just like, I want that from Al Gore, I guess. I mean,
isn't it interesting that you expect certain things from certain personalities,
right?
And you only want what you expect from them,
right?
Yesterday there was a clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is the host of Cosmos,
right.
Which I still think is a great show, and I listen to his podcast called Star Talk Radio,
right?
Great podcast, and it's just fun to listen to this extremely intelligent guy talk about astrophysics in a way that makes sense to the common man.
Right, okay.
Okay, so there was a clip yesterday that was posted from, I think, Upworthy, where someone asked Neil deGrasse Tyson what he thought about race.
Okay.
And my wife brought it up. She was looking through her news feed. And I said, I don't care what Neil deGrasse Tyson has to say about race. I want to hear him talk about science.
Right.
And
right.
that's just the way it is. And, while that might sound bad to some, take it as a compliment.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter who he is or what color he is. This man is brilliant, and I love to listen to him talk about the area of expertise that he has.
Right.
And so, I just have no interest in hearing him talk about anything else.
I'm with you, and I don't know. This may sound a little strange from someone coming on, from a culture and arts podcast commentator, but there are certain things that I am not interested in hearing from celebrities, and I like the art, I like the music and the movies and the things they put out, but I am not really interested in talking about what they wore to an award show. I'm not really interested in hearing about their politics most of the time. Just give me the entertainment side of yourself, and that'll be enough.
Now, see, I probably am a little bit more generous, because I like the whole red carpet. What are you wearing?
You have got to be kidding me. Are you serious?
I'm serious, because you know what? That's art like anything else, man. Fashion is art like anything else.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that.
Politics, maybe not so much. Do I care? Depending on who's doing the talking. But there are times where, I feel like these are people, too, who live in the same nation we do, who are, they have valid opinions.
Agreed. Here's the thing. I do want them to be I want, like all careers, I want everyone to be invested in our community, working to make the world a little bit better place. So I think celebrities, just like you and I, should have, the right to do that. But the problem is, it seems like there's a lot of celebrities out there that have some wacko political opinions that's just not worth hearing about.
Therein lies the problem, I think.
And
it's not that we don't want you to have a political opinion. It's just that a majority of the time, when your political opinions are brought to light, we disagree with them.
Right, maybe that's it. There's a guy out there. There is one celebrity, and there might be more if I would think about it. Penn Jillette, is that how you say it? Penn Jillette. All right, forgive me. But I do actually, I don't agree with everything he says, but I like hearing what he has to say most of the time.
About politics?
I'll even listen.
He's a libertarian.
And sometimes, imagine that.
Yeah.
But even sometimes, even his libertarian stuff, I come at it from a different approach or whatever.
Right.
And he's an atheist, and I actually will listen to hear and talk about, like to hear what he says about how he came to atheism and his faith, or lack of faith, whatever you want to call it. And I'm interested because he's well thought.
He is.
He's
very
thought
well
his things through.
And well spoken.
And so that's always interesting. You give me someone that has thought about their ideas, and I'll listen to you. I'll hear that out.
One of the coolest things to watch is Penn Jillette and Glenn Beck.
Okay.
They have this friendship that has formed over the years. And Glenn is obviously, more like a cultural, conservative, Christian guy. And Penn Jillette's this atheist libertarian.
Right.
And those two have the utmost respect for one another. And they
Right.
sit together and they have these lengthy conversations, and then Glenn Beck will get on his program and talk about these conversations that they've had. And it has significantly influenced Glenn Beck's way of thinking, not on the religious front,
Right.
but on the political front. He's
Okay.
become more of a libertarian because of his friendship with Penn Jillette.
Right.
And the only reason that's even relevant to this show is because it airs on the Weird Libertarians Network or the Wall
Right.
Radio Network. But without saying too much more into it, it's cool when two people of kind of opposing ideologies can come together respectfully, have great conversations, and better themselves a little bit for it.
Oh, I love that. I love talking with people who differ than me politically, but yet we can do it respectfully. I love that, and I love to watch that as well.
Yeah. So while we were away, like we mentioned, the sad death of the Ultimate Warrior.
No
that
kidding.
Came absolutely out of nowhere.
It did. The thing that I like that happened though is that the weekend before, kind of weird that it happened but the weekend before, he was then inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame,
Right.
And kind of they made their peace,
Yeah.
And I'm glad that happened for him.
So there was a lot of bad blood between the Ultimate Warrior and WWE for some time, where there were some connections that he had, relationships that he had with former wrestlers or executives like Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon, and so he had those relationships, but at the same time, they put out this DVD called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior,
Right.
that just bashed his character and bashed him as a performer.
Right.
And he was very, very upset about that.
Right.
And he went and they had a lawsuit that went on for a long, long time. And he drugged the WWE through litigation. And Vince McMahon has this philosophy, at least according to what I've heard Paul Heyman say on other podcasts, where Vince McMahon will take someone and drag them through litigation as long as he possibly can and make it as expensive for them as he possibly can. Because in his mind, the one time that he chooses to settle and give a settlement to some wrestler who was disgruntled, then it's going to open the door for him to have to do that for all sorts of people.
He'd have lawsuits all year long.
So he makes it inconvenient to go to court with him.
Right.
He's kind of like the government. and so the Ultimate Warrior stuck it out, and he went through it, and the Ultimate Warrior ended up winning.
Wow.
And despite, the long, hard fight, he ended up winning. And then sometime down the road, he ends up coming to terms, and they ended up reaching out to him and saying, would you like to be in the Hall of Fame? And so they, work out their conditions and different things. And, some in WWE claim that the Ultimate Warrior was not the easiest guy to work with. He was very stubborn and very principled, and he knew how things needed to be done, and he wasn't going to do them any other way. He wasn't going to negotiate. But they ended up working with him. They got him in the WWE Hall of Fame, and he came out and he gave a speech. And did you watch the speech?
I've seen the speech, yeah.
There's probably nothing more touching that went down that weekend than when he said to his young daughters, he said, you weren't even alive when I did the Ultimate Warrior thing, but I want you to know that as cool of a career as I had, the coolest thing I'll ever do is be your father.
Oh, I loved that when
Yeah.
he said that. That would, because as a father, that resonated with me because,
Right.
especially as a person like myself, I have some career goals and ambitions and out there, but it did put it in perspective. It's like that is what everything's about.
Not only, and it gave you such a good idea about who he was and
Yeah.
what his character was like, and you just know that he was a good guy.
Yeah. Do you know much about the things that he wouldn't compromise on? What the beef was that, he's saying, I won't do it this way. Do you know what those were?
No, I've heard a lot about, for instance, there was a band out of California that wanted him to be on like a heavy metal track with them.
Okay.
And, so he did this song essentially where they played this like heavy metal music, and then as the Ultimate Warrior character, he did some like talking and stuff over the musical track.
Okay.
And then the band asked him to go out on tour with them, where they basically wanted him to, put on the makeup, put on the, the whole Ultimate Warrior gear, and they wanted him to tour with them as kind of like a mascot or something, where he would sign autographs and he would draw people in, and they would do that song together. And other than that, then they would play their music. And the Ultimate Warrior said, okay, well, here's what I want to do. When I come out there, I don't want to wear the face paint. I don't want to wear the tassels on my arms. I don't want to put my trunks on or my coat on or anything like that. I just want to come out in my suit, and I don't want any face paint. I want my hair to be short. Just want to be who I am, and then I'll do the Ultimate Warrior thing with you. And they were like, well, no, because that's not exactly the draw. He's like, well, then it's just not going to happen. Because you see, one thing that the Ultimate Warrior has going for him that was very different from any other WWE superstar is when a Ric Flair retired or when a Hulk Hogan retired, they almost could not let go of the character that they played that made them so famous.
Okay.
And so they went on, and they kept coming back and coming back and coming back to the different companies and playing that character, even though they were well past their prime. The Ultimate Warrior got to a point in his career where he said, okay, I did a really good job with this. I'm really happy with this character and with this part of my life, but now I'm done with it. And he didn't go out on very many appearances where he had the makeup and all the stuff. He didn't put the outfit back on and go out and always be the Ultimate Warrior. But what he did was he legally changed his name from Jim Hellwig to Warrior.
Right.
And he thought that the Ultimate Warrior character lived by a certain set of principles, which was, always pushing yourself to be your best and your biggest and your brightest and your strongest. And he lived his life in a way that he thought was in Ultimate Warrior fashion.
Okay.
But he didn't want to keep going back to that thing. He didn't want to be Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite saying I could throw that football over the mountains.
Right.
He wanted to be himself. And that was just a chapter in his life that, as far as he was concerned, he had pretty much closed.
Now, I find that extremely interesting because I always felt, and you do, I guess as an entertainer, you would much rather leave people feeling this way. But I kind of felt a little bit cheated. I felt like his career could have been bigger, imagine that, and longer.
Sure.
But I kind of can respect if he's saying, I did what I wanted to do.
Right.
And that's that. And I went on, whatever these other things he did, it was time for something else. And I do think that a successful, a balanced person is someone that can say, hey, that door's behind me.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to do right now. That's what I did right then. And if he was able to, make peace with that, good for Warrior. I just, for myself, I wish I could have seen him a little more.
Because we were fans.
We were fans.
And when you're a fan to that degree, you never really want him to go away.
Right.
Because my first match that I ever saw was WrestleMania 6 with him and Hogan.
Uh-huh.
And that made me a lifelong fan of wrestling.
Okay.
Because in my mind, as a 6-year-old boy, he was a superhero.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so to have that superhero go away is to have that part of your childhood go away.
Yeah.
But to keep him in the forefront means you still get to have that. You get to own that little something.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of forever going to be in memory.
Yeah, I'm with you. But when you look at his career, compared to some of these other guys, like you mentioned, Hogan and Undertaker and Ric Flair, their careers lasted multiple decades. And Ultimate Warriors was, compared to that, significantly shorter. I mean, maybe in the case by 2 decades.
Right.
But the response he's got from being in the Hall of Fame and on Raw and that, there's very few bigger than the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and so to think that he did it in such a short time just showed the impact that he had on the sport and how effective he was at selling this character called the Ultimate Warrior. And it was great. I can't, even for myself, I'm a Hogan guy and a Macho Man guy and some of these guys that are classic that you love. But there is something special about the Warrior. He made you excited to watch. You couldn't wait to see
He was
the
a
Warrior.
showman.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you were so pumped up by the time that he got to the ring.
Oh, yeah.
That when the match started, you were tired.
Oh, right. and I thought when he beat Hogan, I think at WrestleMania 7, he got the belt. I thought we were going to see kind of the Warrior taking Hogan's reins a little, and he would, maybe be the champ for the next few years or something. But that's not the journey that unfolded, and so it was kind of interesting. So,
and then when this goes back to his kind of principled stand that he would take on things. He went to WCW when they were very popular.
Yeah.
Before they were bought out, and he had like a brief. It probably didn't last more than a month.
Okay.
But he came out and he was supposed to be the guy to take on Hollywood Hogan and the NWO.
Right. One Warrior Nation.
The One Warrior Nation.
Yep.
And it was weird because, we were all excited to see what the Ultimate Warrior was going to do in WCW. And then a few weeks later, he was gone. Mm-hmm. And we were like, well, what happened to that storyline? What happened to the Ultimate Warrior? And we never really knew. And then come to find out, Ultimate Warrior got there with a set of expectations. And the man behind the mask, he thought, this place is really mismanaged. They're not doing everything that they could do to make this a good experience for the fans. They're not, there's too many, what do they say, inmates running the asylum and that kind of thing. Right. Because there were. I mean, Nash was doing a lot of the booking. Hall was doing a lot of the booking. The NWO guys pretty much ran the show. Right. And, with that said, he just chose to leave.
Yeah, and now we look back, and that was the right call.
It was a good call.
Now, and here's the thing that does always concern me when you hear those kind of things, because I don't know if you're this way, but when you hear a celebrity or an athlete or whatever say, "Oh, I had to leave because I feel it was mismanaged" or whatever. Sometimes there's this party being, that's a little bit of spoiled brat syndrome.
You think they're being a diva?
Yeah, something. Yeah. But it's interesting because now you look back and you've seen how all that unfolded in the WCW. That it was kind of a mess.
Yeah. History has taught us that that's probably the case.
That maybe the Warrior was right. But man, the wrestlers had, they said that, like, it was difficult to work with. But man, the wrestlers on Raw came out there and were giving him all kinds of love, and you're not seeing that now. I know sometimes death will bring that out of people, like, well, I'm going to let bygones be bygones. Right. But the respect seems to be pretty deep.
A couple of the best stories that I've heard about the Ultimate Warrior this week, and this is quickly becoming an Ultimate Warrior show on the Culture and Arts Podcast, but we were both huge fans, so it doesn't really matter.
Huge fans.
Chris Jericho talked about when he was in WCW.
Right.
I heard on a podcast recently, Talk is Jericho is a great podcast if you're into wrestling. He does a lot of stuff, and he talked about when he was in WCW and he was kind of a no-name, and it was around the time that Ultimate Warrior had come in for that brief stint. And he said Ultimate Warrior was very polite to him. But he remembered walking back to the catering truck one day, and Ultimate Warrior had eaten really healthy, and he had like a salad and, and some protein and some different things. And then he took a chocolate chip cookie, and he walked over to the side of the room, and he crumbled the chocolate chip cookie up in his hand, and he put it up by his nose, and he just breathed.
What?
Inhaled. And so Chris Jericho said, what the heck is that guy doing? And he walks over to Hall and Nash, and he says, what is he doing? They were like, oh, that's how he eats his chocolate chip cookies. Like, he doesn't want the calories and all the sugar and all the bad stuff that's inside of it in his body. So he just crumbles it up and he just breathes it in so he can get the smell and all the other sensations. And that's how he eats his cookie. And then he just throws it away because he doesn't want to put that in his body.
No, I respect that dedication, but that cannot be satisfactory.
Not, you would think, right?
I'm almost going to try that.
To me, it's a waste of a cookie.
Right, that's right.
But then it's coming from a guy who's overweight, though. I don't know.
You just can't hold the cookie to your nose? You have to ball it up, or what?
He crumbles it up, and then he just...
That's a little bit wacky.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A little bit wacky.
It's crazy. So that was one of the fun stories I heard about him. Another one of the great things that I had heard about him was that while a lot of the wrestlers kind of form cliques in back and they become groups of friends kind of in and of themselves,
right?
The Ultimate Warrior didn't really have any wrestlers that he was tight with, except for some of the lesser-known guys who didn't get as much credit, like the Brooklyn Brawler. I don't know if you remember him.
He gave him some love at the Hall of
Fame
speech.
Exactly. And he also gave, in his Hall of Fame speech, some love to the production guys.
Oh, wow.
And that was something that the Ultimate Warrior was known for, where instead of going and sitting back and talking to Hogan and a lot of the other wrestlers, he would go back to the truck and he would talk to the production guys and talk to them about how they were doing and their families. And here are these guys that work with the WWE and these companies who didn't really get a lot of, it's kind of almost a thankless job. I mean, it's a job like any other.
Yeah.
But he would go back there and talk to them about how much he appreciated them. He would ask them about how their kids are, how their wives are. And he was more concerned with the guys who weren't getting as much attention, and he was giving them the attention.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's good stuff. That stuff comes back at you.
Yeah.
When, you put that stuff out there. I mean, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You've got me convinced. He must have been a good dude. I mean,
he seemed like a good dude.
It seems like a good dude.
Maybe a little stubborn or whatever, but but a good guy overall.
But stubborn can be a good thing.
And did you know he was an artist?
It's conviction. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you know he was an artist?
I didn't.
When he took time off of wrestling, that's what he did. He painted.
Oh, okay.
And he would just take hours a day and he would paint in his home in Arizona. and he would sell these paintings to different collectors and stuff, and he was actually really talented. So I mean, that's how he made his money post wrestling. That, and he made money, doing different things with his intellectual property, Warrior logos, and different things like that.
I think I've seen him, over the years in a few muscle and fitness magazines.
Right.
I think fitness and health and those things were still his. Mm-hmm. He was out there making money doing those things, I would guess.
He had a couple of comic book projects. I don't think they ever really panned out, necessarily. But from an artistic standpoint, he really was an artist.
Okay.
And that's something that he preferred to do. So it was all for him about his art and his family.
So, all right. How much time we got? Because I think I got one more, David Morrell subject that I got.
We still got 20 minutes.
Do we really?
Yep.
So, are we done with the Warrior?
We can be done with the Warrior. I think we've rambled on enough. Rest in peace.
Amen. Rest in peace, Ultimate Warrior. Well, I thought I'd go ahead and mention that the estate of Michael Jackson is releasing some unreleased music. He's going to come out with an album here, I think May 12th, called Escape, which I'm pretty stoked about, but I thought I'd pick your mind.
Now, is it Escape or is it X-Cape?
Okay.
Because when I saw the artwork, it looked like X-Cape.
Yeah, it looks like Escape, but I think it's Escape or whatever. I don't know. They didn't call me clarify the but I'm pretty stoked about it, but like Letterman, I'm just a fan, a big Michael fan.
Anything that comes out, they could release.
Michael Jackson.
We've got some audio of Michael Jackson opening his refrigerator at home.
And I'm probably out there, buying it. That's true. Here, Michael Jackson singing the theme song to Sesame Street,
right?
And I'm buying that. So I want to get your mind on that. Maybe one. I think you at least respect Michael as a musician and as an artist. I don't know how deep your fanship goes in terms of if you'll run out there and get that or not. So I'm curious about that. And next, what about these posthumous, whatever you call them?
I have a complicated relationship with Michael Jackson.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the one hand, I don't think anybody would give him directions to Sesame Street.
Okay, so why did I have to pick Sesame Street? Why did I have to pick Sesame Street? No, I feel you. I feel you there.
On the other hand, there's no arguing with his music.
Oh, right.
He was a brilliant guy.
Right.
And, he knew his craft. He was, just like anybody, like Van Gogh or Edgar Allan Poe. And these people were a little bit tormented.
Definitely.
And they had some things going on mentally that probably wouldn't jive with most people.
Right.
But there's just no arguing with their art.
No arguing.
Michael Jackson is in that camp, man. And you know what? When This Is It came out, I didn't see the movie, but I downloaded the soundtrack.
Okay.
So
I've seen the movie opening week. So.
Yeah, I know. I know. You probably own it on DVD, don't you?
I do.
Yep,
I do.
Yep.
I'm a fan.
And so when Escape comes out, I will most likely download it shortly after it's released, and I will listen to it. And it's not likely that it will be, on my regular rotation.
Sure.
But I'll give it a chance. And that's the thing about Michael Jackson's music. It's timeless, and he has so many good songs, but I can't just put a Michael Jackson album on and just listen to it in the regular rotation. What I can do is put it on my iPod, and when I'm shuffling through songs, maybe I'm listening to something that I enjoy, and then somewhere amidst the playlist pops up a Billie Jean or something like that. I get excited about that. Because then, this is a great song, and it comes on, and I'm pumped. Sure. But I won't listen to his greatest hits and that kind of thing, just on a regular. But I'm interested to see, because I know when Invincible came out, there were probably 3 or 4 tracks on that album that I thought were some of his best tunes.
Okay. You're not the only one to have that opinion. I've heard that before, and I think most people would put that as probably his worst album. And there's some good songs on there.
Because he was kind of past his prime.
Definitely.
He was out of the spotlight by that point. And,
definitely.
Everything that you saw of him on TV at that point was plastic surgery, marriage, divorce.
Crisis. And,
it was just always something going on with him that wasn't very good. But musically, there were some great tunes on there.
Oh, yeah. And don't forget, it was a double platinum album. The problem is that the shadow of Michael Jackson is so big that, a lot of artists would love to have a double platinum album.
Mm-hmm.
But for Michael, that's failure. You know what I'm saying? That's his worst album that he's had. I don't know how some of his record, how the CDs have done since he died. I don't know how they've rated in that situation. This unreleased stuff, though, do you think sometimes it was unreleased for a reason? Sometimes it didn't make the cut for a reason.
And with a guy like Michael Jackson, I would assume that it's because he was such a perfectionist.
Right.
That these are songs that he wouldn't put out because they didn't meet his standard.
Right.
To the rest of us, they probably sound fine.
Right.
But for him, it was probably like, this isn't exactly what I want it to be. And
right,
so
and I sense that.
there.
I can gather that as you listen to even the album Michael that came out, was the first album released with unreleased material, and you do kind of sense like that didn't have the full Michael thumbprint on it, and part of that is because Michael, like at least when I hear when he gets into the studio, like he would do a lot of beatboxing and stuff to kind of help give direction on where this song's going. And so on Michael, and even a little bit I've heard from Escape or whatever we're going to end up calling that, you're hearing that beatbox that he does with his mouth as a part of. And see, I think that that's just, the estate getting in there and mixing some things together and just putting a song. Because I don't think that's
trying to make a little more money off of his legacy.
I don't think that that's something that Michael would have wanted out for general use. I really think that was a tool that he used to kind of, I don't know if he played the drums or not or whatever, but I think it was those things that he did to let people know where he wanted the song to go and what they had. Because I think some of these songs were, there were developments. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the song that became known as Smooth Criminal initially was called Al Capone. And if you hear the two versions, and even I've heard versions of Billie Jean that are much different because they were earlier in the production process. So I think, some of these may have been stopped early on in production. And so then, now people are going back and say, hey, let's kind of clean this up or, add or take away.
Right.
So who knows if they were ever a complete song.
There's different kind of artists within the music industry, okay? And it's not to take one away from the other because everybody has something special to offer.
Right.
But the greatest, in my opinion, are these people who are not just the kind of, all right, I'm a vocalist, stick me in front of a microphone, show me a song that you've written for me, and I will interpret it in a way that is meaningful. Because those kind of artists are out there, and kudos to them for being able to interpret a song the way that they do. But then there's guys like Michael Jackson who they're not just a vocalist that you're going to say, here's what I wrote, perform it for me.
Right.
He is an arranger of music. He is a composer of music. He is someone who he has a song devised in his head and mapped out in a way that is very specific.
Right.
And if it's not going to be his way, it's not going to be done. And he comes up with things just on the fly. And they're like Billie Jean. And it's like, how did you come up with the concept for Billie Jean? And he's like, oh, well, I knew that I wanted a song with a walking bass line. And so in my head, I had this kind of boom, 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 boom,
right.
And so like he knew brick by brick how a song was going to be put together. And those arrangers of music, those composers, to me, those are like the really special breed that don't come along as often as you would like.
I would even take it a step further because I think I agree with you that he's the composer, but I think in his mind when he's writing a song he has an idea of what am I trying to portray on stage? What am I trying to portray in a video? How is this going to be entertaining? I think he looked at himself perhaps more than just a singer and more than just a dancer, but he was an entertainer.
Right.
And that's why you see, and I can't think of an artist that did it like him, but like he sung songs about, bringing gangs together in terms of Beat It.
Is that what the song was about?
Well, I think that is.
I know that's what the video was about.
Right. I think so. I think that it's. I think the song has that similar theme, like don't just beat it in essence.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
Now I always thought the video was very like
West
Michael Jackson's take on West Side Story.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was his vision. But then he had Thriller with the zombies and Smooth Criminal with the gangsters and on and on. So each one of these had. You don't see artists like most artists seem to sing about, love, relationships, sex, dancing. You know what I'm saying? It was all very, very uniform. And you don't see a lot of artists that can say, take on like the things that he took on.
Well, and a lot of that had to do with the deeper person of who Michael Jackson was, because if you watch things about him, he really was almost a little boy trapped in an adult's body sometimes. So his imagination was coming from a totally different place.
No, I agree, and I think that this is my speculation about Michael, I guess. It's total speculation, but I think that with Michael, like the reason why he maybe didn't sing about love and those things in relationships is because that wasn't entirely a world that he completely understood.
Right.
I never bought when he's singing like, The Way You Make Me Feel and some of these more overt love songs. I never bought it. Never.
You never bought it? Those are good songs.
No. They're good songs, and I purchased them.
Yeah.
But I just was. He could convince you vocally, but I was like never really convinced that is a universe that he. Like there was something kind of staged or fake about. Like even at the beginning of the song on Invincible, when him and Chris Tucker, I believe, were talking about this hot chick or whatever.
Oh yeah. When they were talking back and forth.
Yeah. Michael's
like,
not.
I could get that girl. Man.
Oh yeah,
it was very, very unnatural. Sounding.
Oh yeah, that whole idea of being on the hunt for a girl, that it was a foreign world to him.
He wasn't on the prowl. That was staged.
It's staged, and even the it was very. You've seen it a lot in The Way You Make Me Feel performances that he's kind of walking and chasing that girl or whatever, and that is just. It was just so. That's a 9-year-old could have wrote that video in terms of I'm pursuing the girl or whatever, and so. And I just don't think so. I think that maybe that's why part of maybe what you're saying is like that's why he was able to go into these other cartoony universes of because the love world is I don't think is something he fully understood. I think that either the celebrity hood or his upbringing stunted him emotionally, and so he never was able to then move into adult.
But it probably added something to the love songs just as much as it took away. I mean, when you talk about The Way You Make Me Feel, most grown men, if they are trying to pick up a woman who they thought was attractive at a bar or wherever, walk up and they say, hey, my name's, in his case, my name's Michael.
Right.
Whereas, in his vision of it, he's like, I am spinning around and dancing around this woman and she's walking away from me and I'm moonwalking after her, and all this stuff. And it's like, it's grand.
Oh, yeah, true. No, that you make a good point there.
Tell me how you met Dad. Well, I was in this bar, and he began spinning around a pool table and dancing, and he moonwalked over to me, and man, it was just the best story you could possibly tell the grandkids or something.
Right. I do think that the part of the thing that made him, unfortunately, probably a very tormented individual is probably the same thing that gives him why we appreciate him.
Right.
The fact that he was introduced into celebrityhood and entertainment at such a young age, and then hours and hours and hours of that just drilled into his mind, made him a great celebrity, but less of a human being.
Right.
And so I think that it would be sad to go without his music, but I'll say it, as big a fan I am, if we could go back in time and give him a more normal childhood, I think that would be worthwhile.
Sure.
And we'd go without his music. I think we'd all wish that for him or whatever.
But
I don't think we can have both.
Yeah, we probably couldn't.
I don't think we can have both.
Probably, you're right. But a lot of the great artists throughout time or the great entertainers seem to have that.
Oh, yeah.
There's something that's missing from them, and they're not quite like us.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, that's it. You could do that for a lot of people, but you would be without Michael Jackson, maybe Prince,
right.
And a lot of people.
Yeah, and sometimes that's probably it can be more of a strength if developed healthily. Like if you've gone through something traumatic, you might have some compassion or sympathy for people that have gone through that same thing. Mm-hmm. But when it's at the extreme level that like Michael went through, that would be pretty hard to overcome.
So do you think that there are those who are born to entertain and those who are born to be entertained?
I think, yeah, sure. Yeah, I think some people have a gift to be entertainers, mm-hmm. and I would venture to say that a calling, even perhaps, mm-hmm. to give that gift then to the rest of us. Mm-hmm. Which
you say the rest of us, but really the rest of them is what we should say.
Oh yeah,
because we're on the Culture and Arts podcast.
Right.
So if you're listening right now, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
we're sharing this with you,
Right.
Because it's what we're called to do.
Right. That's it. That's it.
So before we go off the air, and we end episode 11. Man, episode 11, we're doing pretty good despite taking a couple weeks off.
Yeah,
We're still doing well.
We are plugging away.
Who would you like to tip the cap to?
I'm going to tip the cap to the Indiana Pacers. Made the playoffs, number 1 seed in the bracket, so I'm wishing them well. They'll eventually have to likely get by the Miami Heat, but, I'm pretty excited about Indiana basketball, so Indiana Pacers. So that's who I tip the cap to this week.
Now, since Jason's not here, can we have like a mutual tipping of the cap to the Ultimate Warrior?
Yes, I think Jason would agree with that.
Yeah. And then I will tip my cap in exchange to Jason since he's not here.
So, okay. So you're tipping the cap to Jason.
Yeah. We miss you, buddy.
See,
Get back to the show.
And I missed it. I should have tipped the cap to my mom, doing wellness, double lung transplant.
Yeah, definitely.
What a horrible son I am. So,
Hey, man. It's okay. I mean, Indiana basketball,
Right.
mom's lung transplant.
Right, it's all the same.
So we also, as always, we tip the cap to you. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week for episode 12 on the Culture Nerds Podcast.